this House and this country stands united with the French people in our opposition to all forms of terrorism, and we stand squarely for free speech and democracy. And these people will never be able to take us off those values.
A casual midweek lunch hour in what is called by many the most beautiful and serene city in the world is shattered by bullets flying and bodies in the streets. Terror comes to the doorstep of journalism, and we are forced to re-examine again how we drive the killers from their dens and exact the necessary justice. Let's welcome to MidPoint, Director of Studies at the Institute of Democracy and Cooperation in Paris, British historian, journalist, commentator read in the pages of The Guardian, The Times, and The Mail. John Laughland joins us today. John, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ed.
John, what was the immediate reaction, of course, when you heard, but what are you gauging as the reaction of the Parisians themselves?
Well, I think the reaction is pretty obvious. Everybody is appalled, shocked, angry, and possibly frightened. Because, as we know, as your viewers know, as everybody knows, this is not the first of this kind of attack. It may be the worst terrorist attack in France for 50 years. You have to go back to 1961 to get a terrorist attack of this size in France. But it is certainly not the first attack of its kind. On the contrary, there have been a series of attacks in recent weeks on a much smaller scale, but some of them have been bloody. And of course, there have been very famous terrorist attacks, some of them very murderous, in other European capitals, and in other countries around the world, including Australia, Canada, and of course the United States itself on 9/11. So I think people will, of course, denounce these attacks. You've already broadcast David Cameron and other political leaders doing that. But the fact is that the perpetrators have got away at the time when we're speaking. France is a very heavily policed country, but they ran away. They're not being caught. And everybody knows that there are millions and millions of other Muslims in France and in all other European countries, and indeed in Western countries all around the world, in all the democratic countries around the world. And I'm sure people will be asking themselves, how many more radicals are there left among the very many millions of Muslims who otherwise seem to be peaceable citizens within our midst?
John, you mentioned the word shock in here, but you also talked about the fact that this is not the first time there have been bloody attacks, not only in France, but in other countries in Europe, here in America as well. Honestly, though, John, isn't it fair to say that there shouldn't be shock, because we have seen a consistent escalation of this sort of violence in countries around the world? So why would anyone be shocked that these butchers would take it to this level?
Well, I mean, it's because it's a natural human reaction to be shocked. But of course, you're right. In fact, I've just done an interview on another channel, and I reminded the viewers there that Salman Rushdie, the British author, British Indian author, who published a book that was considered blasphemous to Islam back in the 1980s, received death threats. He's still alive, but only thanks to police protection that has been going on for 3 decades now. And yes, of course, you're right. There is a pattern emerging. And, you know, however many denunciations there may be, and there will be many, the fact is, and it's a horrible thing to say, but those cartoonists who drew blasphemous pictures of the Prophet Muhammad are now dead. And in a sense, actions speak louder than words. However many denunciations there be, however many denunciations there may be, it is inevitable now that journalists and caricaturists, satirists and others will think about what happened to the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists when they want to speak freely in future. It's obvious, in other words, that the margin of free speech is going to close down under this pressure. There's no getting around that fact.
John, the people of Paris are usually those who are easygoing in many ways. They are seen as quiet, understanding, many ways politically correct with the rest of the world. 30 seconds before we take a break. Are you then already sensing the not only anger, but the want of revenge for what happened today?
No, I don't think one can go that far, although I would say that the situation is very, very febrile in France, as it is in many other European countries. Only this morning, a book was published by a very famous novelist, which has attracted a lot of attention, which predicts the arrival to power through democratic means of a Muslim party in France in 2026. And lots of people were denouncing this book. All the politically correct media were denouncing this book as scaremongering this morning. Those denunciations have lasted a few hours, and now I'm sure many people will be going into the bookshops to buy this book to think that it is a prophetic book and not some kind of scaremongering.
Hold that very thought, John. Break and we return with what is happening in those major cities around the world, the growing Muslim factions that are mostly peaceful, but the dark secret that every nation and government must now come to grips with. It's on MidPoint.